Today, we embark on a journey starting from China's Kubuki Desert, a place that people once called not merely a desert, but the Sea of Death. For here, life meant a slow, gradual disappearance. Every year, nearly 500,000 acres of land would silently vanish beneath the sand. Fertile ground would transform into desert right before one's very eyes. Vegetation would wither away, and people were forced to abandon their homes and flee. All around lay nothing but waves of sand and scorching winds, and a silence that signaled life was losing its battle for survival. But the most terrifying aspect was that this desert did not stand still. It was slowly expanding. Each year, approximately 500,000 acres of land were swallowed up by the sand. Entire villages, agricultural lands, and roads, everything seemed to be slowly fading away. This process has a name: desertification. Simply put, it is the gradual transformation of land that once supported life into nothing but desert. And Kubuki was one of its most stark examples. At one point, this desert was spreading at such a rapid pace that it seemed impossible to halt. Yet, China did not give up. They made repeated attempts to stem the desert's advance, planting trees, establishing sand control stations, launching massive projects, and investing millions upon millions. But this vast ocean of sand proved unstoppable. No matter how hard they tried, it seemed they were slowly losing the battle. Deserts possess a terrifying characteristic. Once they begin to grow, they are incredibly difficult to stop. It was at this critical juncture that a man stepped forward with an idea that, upon first hearing, everyone simply laughed at. His name was Wang Wenbiao. He embarked on a peculiar undertaking. Draining his entire life savings and taking out loans, he set in motion what many considered an act of madness. He brought in over 100 bulldozers and a workforce of 300 laborers. Day after day, for 18 hours at a stretch, the work continued. Using dried brushwood, he began constructing small square enclosures directly upon the desert sands, and within the confines of these squares, he began planting willow trees. These were no ordinary trees. Their roots could penetrate deep into the earth, reaching depths of nearly 300 feet, in search of water. In other words, in places where no other vegetation can survive, this particular tree manages to carve out a foothold. However, the challenges do not end there. The fierce desert winds are so powerful that mere survival becomes a struggle for these young saplings. The wind whips up the sand, and in doing so, it evaporates the scant moisture trapped within the soil. Consequently, the trees often perish before they even have a chance to take root. To counter this, Wang devised a novel strategy. He encircled the saplings with brushwood barriers to shield them from the direct force of the wind and to help retain moisture within the enclosure. This simple idea gradually set in motion a profound transformation. People continued to mock him. They thought, this man is insane, planting trees in the middle of a desert. Yet, he remained undeterred. Not just for a day or two, but for several consecutive years. He persisted in this very task. Slowly, some trees began to survive, and their roots reached deep into the soil. The shifting sands began to settle, little by little. It seemed as though the impossible was, inch by inch, becoming possible. But just then, another major obstacle emerged. Keeping the trees alive required constant, diligent care. The new shoots and branches needed to be pruned regularly. Otherwise, the trees would fail to grow strong or reach their full potential. In the vast expanse of the desert, performing such a task manually was nearly impossible. Hiring a human workforce to do the job would incur astronomical costs and consume an inexhaustible amount of time. So, who would undertake this labor? Who would manage this entire system across such a massive area and under such arduous conditions? And it was precisely at this juncture that the narrative took a sudden, unexpected turn, one that no one could have ever imagined. The very task that had proven nearly impossible for humans to execute was suddenly taken up by a tiny creature, the rabbit. A specific breed of rabbit, the Rex rabbit, was introduced to the area. These rabbits are often referred to as white gold because their fur is so incredibly soft and valuable that a single high-quality pelt can fetch a price of up to $30, whereas the cost of raising a single rabbit to maturity is a mere $2. That translates to a return of more than 15 times the initial investment from a single animal. However, that is not the true story. The real story lies hidden within one of their peculiar little habits. Rex rabbits happen to have a particular fondness for feeding on the tender, young shoots of the willow trees. And as these rabbits began to feed on the trees' new shoots, the main trunks of the trees grew thicker, sturdier, and more resilient. In other words, a task that humans previously had to perform repeatedly, pruning the branches to strengthen the trees, was now being accomplished effortlessly by the rabbits themselves. But it did not end there. These rabbits made another significant contribution: their waste. It may sound strange, but their droppings began to serve as a potent natural fertilizer. Gradually, life began to return to that dry, nearly lifeless soil. There was yet another surprise in store. These rabbits fed on grass, but they were unable to fully digest the grass seeds. Consequently, those seeds were returned to the soil through their droppings. Before long, it became evident that grass had begun to sprout gradually in places where previously there had been nothing but sand. A small ecological cycle had been established. Nature and the animals began to work in harmony. Slowly, the shifting sands began to settle. The soil began to retain its moisture, and the wind could no longer sweep the sand away as it once had. Within just a few years, the very place that had once been a desolate desert began to turn green. Yet, the story did not end there. This transformation was not confined solely to the environment. It extended into the lives of the people as well. Local residents were encouraged to raise these rabbits. Every household gradually evolved into a small-scale farm. The rabbit fur became a marketable commodity, and raw materials began to be harvested from the trees as well. Consequently, the people gradually began to earn an income. Those who had once fled this desert in despair began to return. This process continued for years on end, until eventually a time came when